Hey, good day. So we are looking at Joshua chapter 8. Um, if you have been watching these videos, the last couple of lessons have been on Joshua chapter 7, where Achan committed sin and the Israelites lost the battle against Ai. In Joshua 7, Joshua had sent men from Jericho to Ai, and they went out and viewed the country. And they returned to Joshua and said unto him, Let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and smite Ai, and make not all the people to labor therein, for they are but few. So that's what they did, but they lost 37 men, I think, against Ai, because Achan had sinned. It caused them to lose. They had broken their fellowship with God. God had just told them, don't take any of the spoil. They did, or Achan did. It caused the Israelites to lose. So they have dealt with Achan, the end of chapter 7. They have called him out. They have made a show of, or I shouldn't say show, but they have made it clear what has happened. They have dealt with the sin. Achan and his family and all his possessions have been stoned and burned. So now chapter 8. I'm going to read. It's probably through verse 29, and we'll make some comments in the last couple of verses of the chapter the next time. But I'll read chapter 8, and I'll make some comments along the way. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Fear not, neither be thou dismayed. Take all the people of war with thee, and arise, go up to Ai. See, I have given it into thine hand, I have given into thy hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land. And thou shalt do to Ai and her king as thou didst unto Jericho and her king. Only the spoil thereof and the cattle thereof shall ye take for a prey unto yourselves. Lay thee in ambush for the city behind it. So the first time God said, don't keep anything from Jericho. And this time he says, you can't have it. And I think of that as the idea of being the first fruits, the idea of a tithe. We give God the first fruits, what he has asked. And so they have given the first fruits of their spoil and the prey and the things they have taken from Jericho. And now they're allowed to keep it. So verse 3, Joshua arose and all the people of war to go up against Ai. And Joshua chose out 30,000 men, or mighty men of valor, and sent them away by night. And he commanded them, saying, Behold, ye shall lie in wait against the city, even behind the city. Go not very far from the city, but be ye all ready. And I and all the people that are with me will approach unto the city, and it shall come to pass, when they come out against us as at the first, that we will flee before them. For they will come out after us, till we have drawn them from the city. For they will say, They flee before us as at the first, therefore we will flee before them. Then ye shall rise up from the ambush, and seize upon the city, for the Lord your God will deliver it into your hand. And it shall be, when ye have taken the city, that ye shall set the city on fire. According to the commandment of the Lord shall ye do. See, I have commanded you. Joshua therefore sent them forth, and they went to lie in ambush and abode between Bethel and Ai, on the west side of Ai. But Joshua lodged that night again among the people. So I'm going to pause right there. Basically, Joshua sent 30,000 of his mighty men of valor, to go behind Ai. He basically sends them at night. Ai doesn't know they're there. They're hiding in the trees or the bushes or the field. I have no idea. But they're hiding. Basically, Joshua says, we're going to go attack the city like we did before. When Ai comes out to fight us, we will run away like we did before. Ai will think, we've got these Israelites defeated, and then they will come out and attack us. We want you to go into the city after they leave and take the city, start a bunch of fires. I want you to burn the city, and then we will stop pretending to run. We'll turn around and fight them. We'll meet you in the middle, and we'll destroy them. So he sends those men, 30,000. And then in verse 10, Joshua rose up early in the morning and numbered the people and went up, he and the elders of Israel, before the people to Ai. And all the people, even the people of war that were with him, went up and drew nigh, and came before the city, and pitched on the north side of Ai. Now there was a valley between them and Ai. And he took about 5,000 men, and set them to lie in ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of the city. And when they had set the people, even all the host that was on the north side of the city, and their liers and weighed on the west side of the city, Joshua went that night into the midst of the valley. And it came to pass, when the king of Ai saw it, that they hasted and rose up early, and the men of the city went out against Israel to battle. He and all his people at a time appointed before the plain, for he wist not that there were liers in ambush against him behind the city. And Joshua and all Israel made as if they were beaten before them, and fled by the way of the wilderness. So this is what they're following the plan that Joshua has laid out. There's men waiting and hiding. The king of Ai has seen them. He comes out against them. Joshua and all Israel made as if they were beaten before them, and fled by the way of the wilderness. Verse 16. And all the people that were in Ai were called together to pursue after them. And they pursued after Joshua, and were drawn away from the city. And there was not a man left in Ai or Bethel that went not out after Israel. And they left the city open and pursued after Israel. The men of Ai are thinking, this is too good to be true. We have this opportunity to completely destroy this enemy that is trying to take over our land. Everyone's excited about it, so every man leaves the city. It says, there was not a man left in Ai or Bethel. Verse 18. And the Lord said unto Joshua, stretch out the spear that is in thy hand toward Ai, for I will give it into thine hand. And Joshua stretched out the spear that he had in his hand toward the city. So it's a sign, hey, it's time for you to attack the city. And the ambush arose quickly out of their place, and they ran as soon as they had stretched out his hand. And they entered into the city and took it, and hasted and set the city on fire. And when the men of Ai looked behind them, they saw, and behold, the smoke of the city ascended up to heaven, and they had no power to flee this way or that way. And the people that fled to the wilderness turned back upon the pursuers. And when Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended, then they turned again and slew the men of Ai. So it has gone just like Joshua had laid out the plan that he has presented to his men. They essentially, it says in verse 22, and the other issued out of the city against them. So they were in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that, and they smote them so that they let none of them remain or escape. So the men of Israel on both sides of Ai, they meet in the middle. They kill all of the men. We'll see that in a second, but there is nowhere for Ai to go, the men of Ai. Verse 23, and the king of Ai they took alive and brought him to Joshua. And it came to pass, when Israel had made an end of slaying all the inhabitants of Ai in the field, in the wilderness wherein they chased them, and when they were all fallen by the edge of the sword until they were consumed, that all the Israelites returned unto Ai, and smote it with the edge of the sword. And so it was that all that fell that day, both of men and women, are 12,000, even all the men of Ai. For Joshua drew not his hand back, wherewith he stretched out the spear, until he had utterly destroyed all the inhabitants of Ai. Only the cattle and the spoil of that city Israel took for prey unto themselves, according unto the word of the Lord, which he commanded Joshua. And Joshua burnt Ai, and made it an heap forever, even a desolation unto this day. And the king of Ai he hanged on a tree until eventide, and as soon as the sun was down, Joshua commanded that they should take his carcass down from the tree, and cast it at the entering of the gate of the city, and raise thereon a great heap of stones that remaineth unto this day. So we're going to stop right there at the end of 29. God allowed Israel to be defeated at Ai the first time because they had broken fellowship with him. Nothing has changed. They went up with more people, but if they had gone up with the 20 or the 30,000, 35,000, however many that were hiding, and then all the other people, if they still had broken fellowship, they still would have lost. It doesn't matter how many people they went up against. So many times in the Bible, God uses a small force or a few people to defeat a much larger army, or he miraculously defeats the army for them. The reason Jericho wins is because they have renewed their fellowship with the Lord. And if you or I are not walking with God like we should be, it will be evident in the defeats of our life, and it will be evident in the victories of our life. So if you're having trouble, if I'm having trouble, let's think about what we can do to draw close to God again and to see what is keeping us from fellowship with Him. Once Israel took out the sin, they deleted the problem of Achan and restored that fellowship, then God was with them again. So there's a couple more verses in the rest of the chapter we'll look at next time. And so that's it for today. Have a good one.